Hostile conversations can range from a hostage negotiator trying to influence a bank robber, to that annoying office mate who disagrees with everything you say and do. Or perhaps you're dealing with a person with narcissistic personality disorder, or someone with the adult version of oppositional defiant disorder. Yes, that's a thing. Oppositional defiant disorder, OD, is a behavioral disorder that is characterized by a pattern of angry and irritable mood, argumentative and defiant behavior, and vindictiveness. Wouldn't that be fun to have to deal with an OD each day? Been there. 90% of the hostility you deal with comes from people you already know and interact with. So let's start there. The first key to dealing with a hostile person is don't. I agreed to coach a person who met every suggestion I shared with hostility. I figured that she wanted to feel in control, and hostility was her strategy for feeling that. As I left the meeting with her, I said, "You got this. You'll figure it out." I didn't have to fight her defensiveness, and left with a smile on my face. Of course, she tried to re-recruit me, but the fact was, I didn't have to fight through her emotional defensiveness because she seemed very invested in her hostility. Peace. Move on. I met a man on the street who took an aggressive posture as he asked for money. I wasn't rattled. I smiled and kept walking. Had he followed me, I would have had to act, but I didn't engage, which is key action number 1, don't, if you can. Speaking of not being rattled, that's key action number 2. When you're dealing with defensiveness, hostility, or related behaviors, you give away power when you allow yourself to react with intense emotions, such as frustration and anger. Don't get rattled. If you can stay neutral, you will appear more powerful than you will if you allow intense emotions to take over. The key is don't appear to be rattled. Why? Hostility is often used to get a reaction from you. It's disarming when you don't take the bait. The question then becomes, okay, but how? Acknowledge the initial emotion, then set the intention to stay even-keeled. You're normal to feel anger, frustration, or similar emotions. And if you can catch the emotion early, you can pivot to a response that is more skillful. If you're scratching your head wondering if people can actually control their emotions like this, the answer is yes. Try it the next time someone cuts you off in traffic, and you're tempted to lay on your horn. You have emotional options, and staying even-keeled is an option you can develop with practice. FBI hostage negotiator trainer Christopher Voss, in his book Never Split the Difference, teaches this in key action number 3, which is active listening. He often starts a hostage negotiation with, "Hi, I'm Chris, what got us here today?" Seeking to understand so the hostile person feels heard can often diffuse the energy, so the other person can calm down. By the way, don't order them to calm down. That only intensifies their hostility. If you must engage the other person and are even-keeled, then active listening to understand starts the ball rolling in the right direction. Key action number 4, empathy mirroring, is like active listening, but with an important difference. What is empathy mirroring? Empathy mirroring reflects back another person's emotions, experiences, or body language in a non-judgmental way. I can tell you're really upset about this. When done right, empathy mirroring helps the other person feel heard, acknowledged, and understood. It also helps us resonate with others' emotions and experiences by activating our mirror neurons, which are neurons that fire both when we observe and when we perform an action. A union negotiator was a small lady who was working with a large man, a bully by most accounts. She held her ground well, by not being rattled by him, but also the use of empathy mirroring. "I notice that you are leaning over me in what looks like an aggressive posture." This caused him to back off and assume a more cooperative position. Key action number 5 is to find a common outcome with boundaries. Find out what they want. State what you want in this situation with boundaries or conditions. "I understand that you want X. I want to resolve this in a way that does Y without violating Z." Hostage negotiators do this all the time. "I want to resolve this without anyone getting hurt." If possible, find common ground. Your angry neighbor might not like your dog, but with some probing, you might find that he really wants less noise during certain hours, and that might be possible. Key action number 6 involves the use of open-ended questions. Questions that start with what and how move the conversation in a good direction. With your difficult oppositional office mate, you might say, "I want to work together better without so much conflict. How can we do that?" When you use open-ended questions with the hostile person, it sparks their thinking to more productive ground. If you ask why, do it in a way that doesn't sound judgmental. "Help me understand why you would want me to do that." Key action number 7 is to work towards resolution carefully. Carefully means 2 key things. 1, don't give in too easily, or you'll encourage more hostility. And the second is to get agreements where you can. In hostage negotiations, they delay simple requests for water or other basic needs to send a subtle message that the perpetrator doesn't have much power. Hostility is all about gaining power where they feel powerless, so agree cautiously, or with conditions that meet your goals or needs. I'll promise to bring my dog into my house by 6 p.m. if you'll agree to stop calling the police when you hear a noise. Get agreements where you can. You might agree on principles if you're hitting a barrier on specific proposals. It sounds like we can't see a win-win solution, but can we agree to keep trying to find an answer that meets both our needs? Or can we at least agree to speak in calm tones so we're more civil in how we handle this? Eventually, you might end up with a solution that can work for everyone, or you won't. But you will need to take action. Protect yourself as much as possible. Hostile people are unpredictable and are dealing with out-of-control emotions. That's why key action number 1 is to avoid them if possible. Don't engage with hostile people unless you must. And if you must, stay as even-keeled as possible. Use active listening and empathy mirroring to help them feel understood, and begin to regulate their emotions. Find out their endgame and state your goals and boundaries assertively. Use open questions to guide the conversations. As you move toward resolutions, don't give in too easily and gain their agreement on small issues along the way to create momentum towards a mutually satisfying solution. One final note, dealing with hostility is draining for most people. Take care of yourself. If you deal with hostility on a daily basis, you must find a way to recharge your batteries, or the stress will degrade your health. Thanks for joining us today at the Change Capability Institute.